So we are starting a brand new unit all about percents and fractions and decimals. So make sure you have your notes out and you're ready to go. First part says, a blank is a part to whole ratio where the whole or the denominator is 100. To write a percent as a fraction, write it over 100 and simplify. So your missing word here is percent. So again, we've talked about part to part and part to whole ratios. So a percent is a part to whole ratio where the whole is 100. To write a percent as a fraction, you write it over 100 and simplify. Pretty simple. Sometimes when you have a percent, it's higher than 100, and that is okay. In this case, you're going to get an improper fraction because when you write it over 100, if the percent is over 100, then it's going to be improper. And then we can turn this into a mixed number. So let's try some examples here. It says write 12% as a fraction. So all you do is write it as a fraction over 100. So I'm just going to write 12 over 100. And then the last step is to simplify. So I got to figure out what I can divide these both by. So I can divide 112 both by 4. So I'm going to do that. So divide these both by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So 12% as a fraction is 3/25. They mean the same exact thing. Okay, the second one says write 134% as a fraction. So this is where you're going to get your improper fraction. So you write 134 over 100, and then I want to make it a mixed number. To make it a mixed number, it's usually pretty easy. 100 is always going to go into 134 one time. So it's always whatever the first number is going to be your whole number. So if it was 234, it would be 2. My whole number would be 2. So it goes in one time. We'd have 34 left over 100, and then the last step is just to simplify. So I can divide 34 and 100 both by 2. So when I do that, I'm going to get the 1 stays the same, and then 34 divided by 2 is 17, 100 divided by 2 is 50. So that would be how you would take a percent that's over 100 and write it as a fraction. You're still writing it over 100, then you just quickly make it into a mixed number, and then you simplify. Okay, so I'm going to give you one of these. We're going to scroll down and try the rest. So sometimes you have percents that have decimals in them. So the steps are still the same. You're still going to write it over 100. And then however many loops it would take to get rid of the decimal point, you would add that many zeros to the end of the 100 that's in the denominator. So for example, I have 12.5%. So I have a decimal in my percent. So I write 12.5 over 100. And then we have to count how many loops it takes to get rid of that decimal. So in this case, it's going to take 1 loop to get rid of it. So now it becomes 125. And then what you do is, for however many loops it took to get rid of that decimal, you have to add that many zeros to the denominator. So it only took 1 loop. I'm only going to add 1 0. So now I have 125 thousandths, which is the same exact thing as 12.5%. Now, I'm going to divide these both by 25s. So when I do that, I'm going to get 5 over 40, and now I can actually divide these both by 5. So when I do that, I'm going to get 1 over 8. So 12.5% is the same exact thing as 1/8. So now we're going to do the complete opposite. So we're going to have a fraction and make it into a percent. So we just found out that when you're making a percent into a fraction, you write it over 100. So the goal here is going to be exactly the same. So we want to make a fraction into a percent. We're going to write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100 because that's our goal. And once you do that, whatever the numerator is, that's just going to become the percent. So for example, we have 16/25. So I need a denominator of 100 instead of 25. So it's kind of like doing this 4 squares thing, only I'm just not going to do the 4 squares. So in order to get from 25 to 100, I'm multiplying by 4. So therefore, I'm going to multiply the top number by 4. So 16 times 4 is 64. Now that we have it as a fraction over 100, our numerator is our answer. So that would be 64%. Okay, and you just put the little percent sign. So if you have a fraction, you want the denominator to be 100. Multiply by whatever it takes to get 100, and then whatever your numerator is, that's your answer. Okay? So I'm going to try one with a mixed number now. If you have a mixed number, like the one here, 1 and 17/20, You can either make it improper first and follow the steps that are above, or I like this way better. Leave it mixed and put the whole number in front of your final answer. I like that method better. So what that means is I'm going to pretend the 1's not even there, and then it's just 17/20ths. So I'm ignoring this 1 for now. That's my mixed number 1, just going to pretend it's not there. I want my denominator to be 100. So in this case, 20 times 5 is 100. So I have to multiply 17 times 5, which is 85. Get rid of, and now that I have 85 over 100, you just get rid of that 100 on the bottom and you call it 85%. Now, the only thing that you don't want to forget to do is that there was a 1 here, so you just put a 1 in front of your answer. So 185%. So that's how you do it if it's a mixed number. The bottom part, finding percents, I'm going to actually hold off on that to tomorrow, so you could just ignore that whole part. So we're going to try some examples based off of the notes. So for the first one here, it's saying write 35% as a fraction in simplest form. So they're kind of showing us like a picture, but we don't know the picture now that we know the steps. Or we don't need the picture now that we know the steps. So 35%, percents are out of 100. So you would start by writing it as a fraction over 100. And then the final step is just to simplify it. I can divide the top and the bottom of this one by 5. So that's going to give me 7/20ths. So that would be my percent written as a fraction. So 35% and 7/20ths are the same thing. Part B, write 100% as a fraction. So what you do is you write it over 100. So anything over itself is equal to 1 whole. So that means 100% as a fraction is just 1 whole, actually, so it doesn't even become a fraction. Part C, write 174% as a fraction. So this is going to be an improper fraction, because 174% is more than 100. So I want to make it mixed. 100 goes into 174 once, with 74 left over out of 100. I can divide these both by 2, so that's going to give me 37/50, and then I just put the 1 in front of it. So 1 and 37/50 would be 174% as a fraction simplest form. So let me give you a couple of these to try. So I'm going to have you pause and try these. So you always start by writing them over 100 and then simplify. So pause and try these two. Now we're doing the complete opposite. So they're giving us a fraction. They want us to make it into a percent. So I have 3/50ths. If I'm making it into a percent, then I want the denominator to be 100. So we'll put 100 on the bottom. Figure out what you're multiplying 50 by to get 100, which is 2. Multiply the numerator by the same number, which is 6. Anything over 100 is a percent, so you just take the numerator and put a percent sign. So this would be 6%. So let me give you one of these to try. You have to make the denominator 100, change the numerator, and then whatever the numerator is, that's your answer. So I'll pause and give you one of these to try. Okay, so you're going to try this one. You want your denominator to be 100. You're going to change your numerator, and then whatever your numerator is, that would be your final answer. So pause and give this one a shot. So sometimes you get a fraction like this where the denominator doesn't go into 100 evenly, so it's kind of like another middleman problem. So there's more than one option for solving this. So for this one, I can actually put these in simplest form. So 9/12, I could divide these both by 3. And then when I do that, I get 3/4. And now I have a denominator that goes into 100. So I'm going to put my 100. So it's like a middleman problem, kind of. So 4 times 25 goes into 100. So I'm just going to multiply the numerator by 25. So that's going to give me 75 over 100, which is 75%. Now, not all the time do you get a fraction that simplifies that will give you something pretty like this where it goes into 100. So I'm going to show you one in a second. And this might be a little bit tricky, so we'll go over this again in class, but I just wanted to show you one. So I'm going to pause it and bring up that one to show you. If you take a look at this problem, it says you delete 3 out of 16 pictures on your digital camera. What percent of the pictures did you delete? So if you look at this one, you have your fraction of 3/16. It's already in simplest form, and 16 doesn't go into 100. So there's this trick that you can do. So I'm going to show you this trick. We want the denominator to be 100, but 16 doesn't go into 100. So there's this trick called cross multiplying. So what I could do is I can multiply these diagonally across. So 3 times 100 is 300. And then I can divide it by the number I haven't used yet, which in this case is the 16. So 16 goes into 30 once, which is 16. And then when I subtract, I got to borrow a little bit. I'm going to get 14. Bring down the next digit. So I have 140. Now, 16 goes into 140. I don't know. I'm going to guess, let's see, 16 times 5 is 80, so 96. So let's try 16 times 7 and see how close we get. So that's going to give me 42, 112. Okay, so let's try something more than that. If I add 16 to that, that's going to be 128. So yeah, so it's going to go in 8 times, we'll say, which is 128. Now I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to get a remainder. So let's see, I get a remainder of 12. So we have to add a decimal point and a 0. Add the decimal point at the top. Bring down my 0. So now 16 goes into 120. I know 7 times from the math I did here, which is 112. Subtract, I get a remainder. You keep adding zeros, and now 16 goes into 80 exactly 5 times. So I have 18.75. So that's going to go on the top here. So that's going to be my percent. So 18.75 over 100 is 18.75%. So you would just kind of get rid of the denominator after you've solved it, and that would be your final answer. So 18.75% would be what 3/16 is equal to. We're going to try more of these because I think that's kind of confusing when you first see it.